Well, good evening to all of you. I am driving through the vineyards, one of the most exciting times of the year, getting very close to harvest. Actually, more than close to harvest because we did pick some Moscato on Saturday. Saturday was a gorgeous day. It's in the 70s, clear sky, a little bit of breeze, and we harvested about 12,000 pounds of Moscato in small crates to air dry for pasito. And I will show you in a little bit where the grapes are and what's going on with them, how we're treating them. There is a step in between and I may have never showed you, which you will be able to take a look. And with a couple days of a little bit of rain, we only got 0.1 inches last night, not too bad. Today's in the 70s the temperature. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, the weather is clearing again. We will likely resume picking by finishing the harvest of Moscato for Fileo, our beautiful Fileo. And then likely the week after, we will for sure start looking at harvesting some Pinot Grigio, which we see right over here. We saw it last week. A lot of time people ask me how important is technology in what we do. And even though in the vineyard, technology a lot of time is used for mechanization for certain operation, which we do manually, and now we can do with machines. It really has been the weather forecasting. I remember in the 90s when I came, I had a weather radio. And all you had is a radio message, which was pretty good, but there were no radars available to us. Nowadays, instead, with radars, we can really see in live where the storms are, how they are moving. There are even certain nights when Fernando is on the harvesting machine at 2 a.m. in the morning, picking Pinot Grigio, and then I am looking at the radars, and there have been times where with him, I communicate and say, Fernando, it looks like a storm is going to hit us about 6 a.m., and therefore we can plan accordingly to stop a few minutes before to avoid having rain going into the harvester or on the grapes, and then some water may get into the crop. So very thankful for that technological advancement. A lot of other things still are very much tied to personal experience, to our eyes, our feel, tangible, touching the grapes and tasting them, tasting the juice. I took a sample of Sauvignon Blanc yesterday morning. I was very curious to see where we stand with Sauvignon Blanc, knowing that yet was a bit far away from harvest, and indeed is about 10 days away. And I was able to observe how important, again, is for us to put netting around the vines, around the clusters, especially with Sauvignon Blanc. It's a very early ripening variety, is very fragrant, as much as Moscato, a little bit less, but in that range. And as I was taking sample, I noticed that a few vines had some bird pecking, and I did take a picture. And I thought about showing it to you. Let's do it this way. So there it is. This is from a vine that for some reason the netting separated. It is stitched to keep it closed. One stitch broke, and that was sufficient for birds to get easy access. This is where they go in, they just pack the berry, they take out some juice, the seeds, and then the berries start to attract fruit flies, They fly on here to suck on the juice, but fruit flies carry a lot of bacteria on them, especially acetobacter, which are the contributor to transforming, the bacteria transforms from sugar, they transform all the way into acetic acid. A step in between is alcohol, because there is fermentation undergoing, and then another byproduct down is acetic acid. And this acetic acid, this bacteria infection is going to spread through. So we for sure have to go through the vineyard and just check for pockets of this. I think we have very, very few, and we clean them up. And so that's, the whole vineyard would look like this if we don't put netting on it. So that doesn't happen as much with other grapes, like Chardonnay a little bit. Merlot, Cabernet Franc is very rare to see any particular intense pecking from birds. What you're seeing now is a vineyard that we recently planted of Pinot Grigio, a little bit of Pestil Manseng above. I think you heard me saying that before. And then here we head up to the to our Goodloe Mountain vineyards. There is still quite a bit of activity going on up here. You saw this vineyard last week, and I recall there were still a few clusters of Nebbiolo which were not completely blue dark, and this week instead we can really see that everything turned very, very even blue colored, so a good sign. Yeah, so we're here now to a new vineyard. This is a very recently planted site. We planted on Cabernet Sauvignon. This is a new clonal selection that we introduced 3 years ago. We're going through some thinning out of, you see some crop on the ground. We're lowering the yield a little bit. Cabernet Sauvignon, of course, is a little bit more behind the ripening compared to Nebbiolo. So you still see some green berries. Soon they're going to start turning all into a darker color. And I'm really looking forward to produce wine from this vineyard. This is going to be the first year. You heard me many times saying that Cabernet Sauvignon has some limitation here in Virginia to produce a great wine due to the clay. Although this site in particular, before we planted, we did some digging, and we dug some pits. The soil below is quite rocky. It doesn't have as much water retention. We also can see that the vines have a bit less growth compared to some other vineyard that I can show you in a little bit. And that's a symptom shown by the type of soil we have. So this small vineyard is only 4 acres. Could become, with a good consistency, producing some great Cabernet Sauvignon. Occasionally we have Cabernet Sauvignon in Octagon, not very frequently. With this new site we'll see. If it's up to standard that we look for, it will be introduced. If not, it will be used in our Cabernet Sauvignon, the classic, and sometime may be introduced in our Cabernet Sauvignon Reserve. At this time of year, what is very important is to be able to have a healthy canopy. The canopy is all these leaves, and having them with no disease or a minimum amount of disease on the foliage allows for photosynthesis, for the photosynthesis to be efficient. If we had to have a lot of disease on the foliage and the leaf starts dying, then we don't have enough surface to ripen the grapes, and the grapes at some point they reach a certain point of sweetness and then they idle. and they will never be fully ripe. And so we may encounter a situation that if we don't have a healthy canopy, the wine will be not as intense in color, the aromas may be a little green, and the acidity would be higher, the tannin would be astringent and a little bit of bitterness. So there is a lot that goes on, and that's why we're still here optimizing things. This vineyard likely will be picked toward mid-late September. It's somewhat earlier ripening a clone of Cabernet Sauvignon compared to what we planted in the mid-90s. So that's what it is, the excitement of a farmer. Yes, we do have ups and downs. People, sometimes I hear them say, oh my gosh, it's so romantic what you do. I say, sometimes it is, but let me tell you that sometime when you are ready to get up and start harvest and picking and it starts raining, it's not very romantic. It actually is quite disrupting. But anyway, it's all good. Yeah, let's go see another. Yeah, even these vines. Look at these vines. For some reason here may be a pocket of soil that is a bit more vigorous. There's a lot more growth than the one we saw earlier. Okay. And all that's driven by what's underground. We take another peek at a vineyard here of Cabernet Franc we saw last week. We have done one pass to reduce the crop, and as I said, we're going to then come back. We will be coming back, and these clusters, they're all going to go on the ground. Some vines, they perform a bit different than others. Some are a lot more even in coloring, some are less. Each vine has a little bit of its own individual characteristics. Again, how it interacts with the underground. Like this vine is nice and very evenly blue. And so that's what you need. You need people that have the right knowledge, the right eye to see things, and they're motivated to excel. And here they are. And these are our vine whisperers. They started this morning. It was raining, you know, raincoats go on, and off we go. Yeah. It's really comfortable today, humid, but 71, 72 degrees. It's a good day. It's also a good time for mushrooms, by the way. A lot of chanterelles up in the woods. I'll show you some later. Bom dia. And so here we do it. What we do, we also eliminate some cluster from very weak shoots, like this one. See, this shoot is considered still very green. This is very green, and it doesn't nourish as much the cluster. So that's the cluster that we'll be removing. Ideally, we are targeting these weak shoots first, leaving behind the stronger one to carry the crop for the season. And that's how you make a great bottle of wine. Or you can make two, if you don't do anything, of good to mediocre wine. And that's what makes the difference. There is no cutting corner, there is no other choices. And it's all about what kind of philosophy you establish in your estate. You want to make more wine and of lesser quality. There's a market for that. But for us, the choice is to make the best wine we can, given the weather we're given, and that's where we are today. And I said it many times, I say it again. by doing that, we created wines in the late 90s that were exceptional, and they were so great that I decided the best way and the only way really to enjoy them was to open a great restaurant, Palladio restaurant. Yesterday we had a very nice lunch. It was a theme lunch. The theme was Cabernet Franc, and so we sampled several vintages of Cabernet Franc. We sampled 2020, 2017, 2014, and the beauty was that they were all great wines, but they were all noticeably different when tasted at the same time, and that's given by the vintage. So you'll hear more about Cabernet Franc. In about a week or so, we're going to release our note from the winemaker. It's going to be centered on Cabernet Franc. As you know, it's becoming now the most grown grape in Virginia. The reason is very simple. It's just so consistently producing great wines. And I'm very excited that this year we have some new vineyard we planted recently that never been in production yet. And so we're going to have a new experience tasting new wines from a new site. But let's go down to the winery and take a look at some Moscato that we pick on Saturday, and I'll show you what we're doing to these grapes right now. And as I mentioned earlier about Chanterelle, the season is good. I was fortunate to be out this weekend, found quite a stash in the woods, brought them here at the restaurant. So if you come this week at Palladio, you're gonna have beautiful, nice, fresh Chanterelle, and likely in some preparation, which would include some tomatoes. These are from our garden here. So good season. If you guys are into Chanterelle, you know where they are. If you go, likely this is the time to find them. And I brought them here and I gave them to Chef. I traded for some pine nuts. And so Chanterelle for pine nuts. So I made a bunch of pesto yesterday evening, basil, prepare it, put it in the freezer, good for the year. Let's go see some Moscato in the trailer now. And here I am. Here is a trailer that has been keeping these grapes right around 30 degrees since Saturday evening. This afternoon the grapes will go in the drying barn. The reason why we went down to 30 degrees is to basically inactivate and eliminate any fruit flies that may have entered into the trailer or they were hidden into the grapes. Fruit flies, what they do, they can lay eggs into the berries, and the eggs, they hatch into a small larva, and then that rots. We have also, like we said before, some Acetobacter. They will make the wine, they will make the berries deteriorate and turn into vinegary. So this is a step we do before air drying to guarantee that the grapes, they go in, they're as clean as possible and in the best condition for air drying for 60 days and then pressed to become Passito 2022. I'll see you next week.